but person, etc. But hey everybody, making a video today because I actually want to talk about something that happened yesterday that I'm starting to notice is becoming a stronger trigger for me. And so I'll just describe the incident and talk about what aspects about it feel triggering to me. So yesterday, I back up a little bit. I've been volunteering lately for the last few months for this LGBT youth group in Nashville. It's just now starting to form, and I'm super excited to be a part of it because there isn't anything like this in Nashville. And yesterday was the first of the monthly coffee shops for LGBT youth. So we have this space that we just kind of like transform into a coffee shop with performers and free coffee and teas and snacks and stuff like that. And it was awesome. It was awesome to finally see the first one happen and to have like, I don't know, 15, 16 youth show up to it. It was great. So that's where I was yesterday. And three of us volunteers were at the sign-in table, just kind of greeting people as they were coming in and doing that sort of stuff. And one of the volunteers at one point went downstairs because her partner had shown up, so she's gonna let her in. And then walks her up, to the greeting table, and introduces me and one other volunteer that were at the table. It says both of our names, points to each of us to indicate who's who, and the partner proceeds to go and shake the hand of the other person and greet them, introduce themselves, and completely ignores me there. So this involves 4 people, and the 3 other people are all female-identified queer folk. And I was the only, I guess, male-identified person around, and presumably cisgender appearing, possibly being assumed to be a gay man because of the space, etc., whatever. Can only make so many assumptions about what was in that person's mind at that point. But despite the very clear indication that there were 2 people there sitting right next to each other, well, I was sitting and the other person was standing next to me, the partner just greets the other person, talks to them for like a couple of sentences, and then her and the volunteer, who's her partner, walk in to kind of check out the coffee shop space. And I stared at this person the entire time, expecting them to kind of, after they've greeted the other person, to turn around and say hi to me, acknowledge the fact that I'm there somehow, or at least, like look in my direction and just, do a hey, head nod, whatever, something. Visual acknowledgement. And none of that happened. Both of them just kind of walked away. And I felt like this surge of anger. And I knew I was triggered and angry because where I feel my triggers are and especially if my trigger shows up in a sort of like angry way, I feel it here, like right underneath my skin and my forearms, just kind of like underneath it feels like something's burning. And then I can feel like my chest kind of tighten up, and then it kind of like hurts right here. Luckily, the other person next to me, who was the one that was greeted, acknowledged, is a good friend of mine, and she needed to walk away for a little bit, and I was kind of staffing the table by myself, and then when she got back, I was able to ask her if I could just process what just happened. And it was obvious that she had noticed it too. And so I was able to kind of emote and be honest and just kind of like talk shit out, so that I could be in a positive space again, acknowledging the event and all that kind of stuff, and not wanting to be in a triggered space around queer youth. So the reason I think that specific incident really, really triggered me is because I've been experiencing very similar dynamics a lot here in Nashville, where I'm around a group of queer women, maybe inside the group, like I'm hanging out with a bunch of queer women, often the only male-identified, male-presenting, whatever person in the group, maybe one out of two at most, and it's like I'm not there. I'm completely invisible, and people say things to imply that I'm not there, such as, I can't believe I'm in a room full of women loving women, and y'all didn't recognize this name. This was an actual thing that happened a few months ago, a couple months ago. Anything that kind of implies that everybody in the room is female, anybody within hearing distance is female and queer, and is okay being referred to as such, and all this kind of stuff. And it's happened successively. And I think one of the pieces for me that has been so triggering about it, and especially I think in that space, is because it completely erases my history too. Granted, the person who just met me, because there was no acknowledgement of meeting me, has no idea that possibly, like, I don't know what her partner has told her, has absolutely no idea that I'm a trans guy, that I used to identify as a queer person, etc. But okay, sorry about that. So to continue from where I was, try best not to repeat myself. So I think, so a couple of reasons why that stuff has been really, really triggering is, as I explained, despite the fact that I have no idea what this person knows or does not know about me, it completely erases my past and my history, and all of that stuff is part of my present, and part of my identity as a trans guy. It erases the fact that at one point I identified as a queer woman, and that I was a valid part of that community, and consider myself to be someone who really, really finds a lot more community and space and comfort around queer women than most other groups. So it just relegates me to the sideline, and it's a very isolating sort of way, because the sideline is within the context in which I exist. So it's the sideline of my own life. I know I'm kind of rambling and not making much sense, but I keep getting these visuals of what's going on in my head, and I don't know how to exactly describe it. I think the other piece for me is that it also erases my activism and my passions in my work. I have been involved in queer activism and queer work for like a decade now. It's part of it's my job. It's my volunteer work. It's the stuff I blog about and reblog about, and passionately debate and invest so much time and energy into, and it's like I'm not there. And that's why I was saying that, especially in that space, it triggered me in a very sort of like internally volatile way, because I was there volunteering at a queer event, and here's this person that's part of the queer community in one way or another, meeting somebody else at a queer event, completely not acknowledging their existence. how do you do that? How do you go to something that's supposed to be affirming, supposed to be this queer safe space, and make someone feel invisible who's queer, and completely like they don't belong, like this, they shouldn't be there, and it pissed me off. It pissed me off so much, and it hurt. It, for the first time in a long time, like I had this urge to just burst into tears because I was sad for something that happened to me. And usually, and especially being here, I've had to have this tough skin to like not get so emotionally wrapped up into stuff that happens to me and is said about me or gets done around me, so that I can just kind of truck through. But this one just blew all off, and acknowledge obviously that it wasn't this one incident, but this incident had all these other ones behind it, and that this one was just magnified because of the space and the manner and the blatancy in which it happened. So, yeah, and I feel lucky that I was in the space that I was, because I had to check myself to not react, to not blow up, because I didn't want any of the youth around to be affected in any sort of way. And I'm also lucky that it happened with one of my closest friends right next to me, who saw it, felt I felt something, and that I was able to process it through, and that this person was able to affirm what I was feeling and what I had noticed, and didn't make me feel like I had, I was blowing things out of proportion. Like, she was angry, too. Yeah. And interestingly enough, at the end of the night when we were cleaning up, wrapping up, putting everything away, she walked up to me and introduced herself to me. And her partner said something along, and it kind of like threw me off, but I just kind of went for it. Her partner was a few steps behind her and said, "I introduced you, like, when we first got in." And she pretended like that had never happened. And it was so obviously a lie. It was so obviously something that she was just kind of telling herself as much as she was telling me. That somehow, because maybe I'd said something close enough to her to make me cool enough, or somebody had said something about me to her that made me cool enough. I don't know. Made me cool, appropriate enough for her to acknowledge my existence. But then she decided that I could have the privilege of shaking her hand and meeting her. And that was just kind of like the cherry on top for me of like, I don't need to know you. You made a choice when you walked in, and how you were going to treat me, and trying to backpedal a couple hours later doesn't work for me. Especially when that backpedaling doesn't involve any sort of apology or acknowledgement of what you did, but rather pretending like it never happened. So while externally I reached my hand back in return and said, "Nice to meet you, I'm TJ," instead of saying, "You and I are never going to be friends. You and I don't actually need to talk much. I'll be civil to you, especially when I see you around your partner, and especially at these events, but beyond that, like, if I don't have to acknowledge you, I'm not going to either." So yeah, this has definitely been something that has surged up as something that's super triggering for me, is how incredibly invisible I feel in queer spaces. I already feel pretty invisible in non-queer spaces, but feeling that invisibility in queer-specific spaces has become like a huge emotional drain for me, and I'm tired of constantly having to prove myself and show people or tell people that I did belong. I shouldn't have to, especially in those types of spaces. No one should have to. No one should have to disclose things to prove themselves out, to belong. And I think it was a very, very in a way, it was, I think, just as much about me remembering that and re-feeling that, so that I'm a lot more observant and watchful around the spaces around me. And if I ever do that, and if I have any sort of power and influence in changing how somebody else feels that space, if it feels in that space. So it's a great reminder, and so that's what I'm going to take from it. But yeah, thanks for listening.